tomorrow morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
The topics are hot. The discussion is heated. And we're on fire. The First Take podcast starts now.
Good morning to you. Welcome into First Take. Molly, Skip, and Stephen A. are making their way to Super Bowl 50, so we are all taking over today. Prim Saripapat, Kate Fagan, George Adano, Freddie Coleman. Guys, how are you doing this morning?
Great to be here. Happy to be here with everybody.
I don't think this crew has ever worked together. Not this specific
Not all four of us.
Not all four of us.
You're the outcast of the whole.
I'm the outcast.
We work together.
That's how the show is going to start, okay?
Yeah.
I'm the outcast.
Yeah, we've had the Wonder Triplets activated before. Now you're part of the Justice League.
It's going to be a good day. All right. So we are now 5 days away from Super Bowl 50 and playing in his fourth Super Bowl. Many believe this will be Peyton Manning's last rodeo, considering his history with injuries and the fact that he's turning 40 next month. However, at Media Day yesterday, Manning stiff-armed all the questions regarding his potential retirement.
Stay in the moment, focus on the task at hand, take it 1 week at a time. There's about 10 other cliches you could use right there, but it truly has served me well in the unique season that has occurred this year with the injuries, and it's just been different for me. So not getting too far ahead, not looking too far back has really helped me. And so I am excited about this week and looking forward to playing in this game, and I'm going to focus on that and then deal with all the other stuff after this.
All those QBs good at saying something but not really saying much of anything. So the question is, if the Broncos lose, should Manning retire? Freddie?
He's going to, but maybe I'm being too selfish for my own good. I don't think he should. I want to see him do it one more time. I mean, I'm not hoping that they lose, so he'll try to come back and try to right that wrong. But there's certain people that I miss playing in sports, even at the point that we've seen Peyton Manning look like an old Peyton Manning, not the old Peyton Manning. I still miss Magic Johnson, Larry Bird playing basketball. I still miss those guys at the height of their powers. And I know we're never going to see that Peyton Manning again. But from a selfish standpoint, I don't think he should, because I still believe that fire is going to be there with him. I don't think he enjoys the fact that 9 touchdowns, 17 interceptions was part of his year before he got back after being injured. And he's been okay. He hasn't been great, but you know what? He hasn't cost the Denver Broncos any games. He's been able to be that game manager that I thought we would never, ever hear with Peyton Manning's name. If you said Peyton, game manager Manning, at that point you'd have thought that the world would have ended and dogs and mailmen had united all over the country by hearing that kind of term. So from a selfish standpoint, and I'm just speaking for me, I just enjoy seeing him going out there and compete. I can enjoy seeing him coming back for his team, wanting to be there with his teammates, to try to get that final shot at that ring, to try to lead this organization to do what they did, what John Elway did, where he was a game manager at the end of his career with Terrell Davis in the backfield at running back. So from a selfish standpoint, I know it doesn't make sense. I don't care, because this is how I feel.
That's all right. Sports isn't meant
I know he's going to
sense.
retire. It's his final year. It's his final game on Sunday. But for a selfish reason, I want to see him come back one more time. I hope he doesn't do it. I don't think he should do it, because I still believe that fire is still there in him to want to go out there and play, no matter how long it is.
George?
I mean, that fire could be burning all it wants, but that thing is reducing. The flame is getting smaller and smaller because physically he's just not able to do what he once did. You look at his stats this year, 9 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. Look at some of the other great quarterbacks that played into around that same age. A Dan Marino, a Brett Favre. Those last years were just as ugly as Peyton's was this particular season. So there comes a time with all of us, regardless of whether we're athletes or not, where your mind says, yeah, I can do this, and your body's like, oh, hell no, that's not happening. And we've gotten to that point with Peyton Manning. So we're at a point where Peyton Manning has become a game manager. And I know people look at that as a negative connotation, but for whatever it's worth, it's helping them win games because their defense is hellacious. Their defense is one of the best defenses we've seen in the National Football League. I've had this conversation with numerous guys this week on the radio show, and they're putting it in the top 5, 10 category as far as all-time defenses are concerned. So you look at them carrying Peyton, it's not the Peyton we're used to seeing. So because of that, I want him to go. I want to remember Peyton Manning fondly, the guy who's throwing 50 touchdowns all over the field, not this guy who looks wounded out there.
Yeah. Well, Freddie mentions like the height of athletes' power and how we miss seeing them in those moments, and we certainly do. When I think of, you mentioned Larry Bird or Magic Johnson, I'm picturing them in their heyday, not in some of the later moments of their career, which is where we are completely with Peyton Manning. And the thing is that this year in the Super Bowl, he will have had the worst regular season of any QB ever who eventually gets into a Super Bowl. I don't think that's the kind of legacy he wants to leave, and he has a chance now to go out on top, whether they win or lose. I think he's in a place now where a lot of people never thought he would be able to finish his career. If you asked me 2 or 3 years ago, how would Peyton Manning go out? It looked pretty likely like he was going to go out early playoff game with like 3 interceptions. And now he's here at the Super Bowl. So for him to come back next year feels to me like a lot like if you're riding a blackjack streak and you've won a bunch of hands in a row and you have all these chips and you're going to put them down on another hand. That's what that feels like. If I'm him, I'm like, win or lose, this is a lot better than I thought it was going to be, and I'm going to walk away.
Kate, forget about just a couple of years ago. How about 4 or 5 weeks ago?
Right.
You would have none of us would have thought they would be here in this particular situation. And the reality is the injuries are mounting up. And the biggest predictor of injuries moving forward is injuries from the recent past. So this isn't going to get better for him. He's not going to get more healthy at 40 years old.
Do you think he could withstand not being a starting QB, a backup guy somewhere?
No. He doesn't want to do that.
No way.
And the Denver Broncos, they've made their decision in terms of the perception that no matter what happens, if he decides to come back, Brock Osweiler is going to be the quarterback of this football team because that's the kind of quarterback that Gary Kubiak wants in his system, an athletic guy who can run the stretch play, who can have that kind of threat on the corner where you can do the bootlegs and throw the ball across the field. I completely get all of that. And believe me, his legacy is not going to be tarnished with me no matter what happens on Sunday because you're going to have in your mind about Peyton Manning whatever it's going to be. If you feel, people all talk about the playoff record, but you look at his numbers compared to Tom Brady, his numbers are more than comparable in terms of not record, but in terms of touchdowns, interceptions, completions. And by the way, he's beaten Tom Brady in the last 3 championship games in the AFC. Once with the Indianapolis Colts and 2 with the Denver Broncos. Yeah, game manager with the Denver Broncos against the New England Patriots about a week and a half ago, but still 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and they've been able to keep him clean. That kind of motivation for Denver will be very, very significant. They're going to try to pull the upset on Carolina.
We also do this thing where we ascribe greatness only to our athletes who win in the big games, despite the fact that we know, statistically speaking, especially in the NFL and even at the QB position, that single players are not influencing the game to such a degree as to be solely responsible for winning a championship. And yet we do this thing with Peyton Manning. We've done it where because he's lost 2 Super Bowls and Tom Brady has 1 more Super Bowls, therefore the legacies are different. But when you look at Peyton Manning, and I think Bill Barnwell had a great piece on this, he completely revolutionized the NFL. The number of percentages of snaps that are in shotgun now is just like completely different than it was when he came into the league in the late 90s. So his impact, regardless of winning the title, is cemented.
You know what's going to be really crucial for him when he steps on that field is to take a handle of his nose. Because if you think about it, if you're going out, if you came out here and you knew that this was going to be the last show of your entire life, how nervous would you be? And you don't want to come out there blazing, and you just got to make sure you take a handle of those nerves.
With him, I don't think that's going to be the issue. It's a fair point in terms of everything that he has talked about, or tried not to talk about, because anytime they throw in that final game question at him, boy, he's been dancing around and trying to deflect everything. He looks like something out of a video, put it that way, so you think you can dance. That's what he's been basically able to do by saying, but not saying the thing that we know is going to happen, that once this game is over, to George's point, the case point, his body can't take it anymore. There's no way that Peyton Manning was to be out there like that, but that fire, if they lose, it would not surprise if he changed his mind and decides to come back 1 more year.
And the one thing that I'm looking for is we've talked throughout Peyton's career is he is the ultimate adjuster, especially at the line of scrimmage. We've given him so much credit for being able to read and react and change and adjust. So can he apply that internally to himself? We think that he wants to try and be this certain QB. Will he be able to, on Super Bowl Sunday, adjust for the final time in the most ultimate way by game management without interceptions and allowing his defense to win this game?
Especially against the Panthers defense that ranked top 5 in the league last season.
Well, let's look back. I think he can do that. If you look at the championship that they won against the Chicago Bears, and that entire run, Peyton didn't have a very good run in that particular postseason. He's had better runs, and they've lost before as far as his statistics are concerned. And they relied a lot on Adai and Dominic Rhodes in that particular run with the Indianapolis Colts. So he's got an opportunity where he can say to himself, I can lean back on what I did did back then and apply it now.
And the Colts had a great defense that year, too. They won a Super Bowl. Bob Sanders, Defensive Player of the Year that year.
They did. Now, on the other side of the ball, the reception has been different for Panthers quarterback Cam Newton. Not so much about his performance, but more about his likability. Hall of Fame quarterback Warren Moon doesn't understand all the criticism that Cam is getting, so here's what he had to say to Fox Sports. That's the thing I don't understand. How come they just can't let it go? If he hasn't done anything recently that's been against the law or anything that would cause negative publicity, isn't out in the world doing something wrong except for just dancing after a touchdown, I mean, what is the big deal? He's worked toward maturity in the last 5 or 6 years he's been in the league and has done positive things to erase a lot of that negative stuff from what he was 18, 19 years old. I just don't know why people can't let all of that stuff go. Does Cam deserve all the criticism he's getting, George?
No, absolutely not. I mean, this is ridiculous. I've had this conversation on my radio show with people. I just legitimately one day just posed it. Okay, tell me why you don't like him if you don't like him. And I got all these ridiculous responses of, oh, the laptop thing at Florida. And I'm like, look, man, how many people do things when they're 18 or 19 years old that they live to regret? And they say, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. We've all done stupid things when we were young, and some of us even as we've gotten a little older.
Even an hour ago with me.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, we're talking, 6, 7, 8 years ago at this point? You got to be able to move on from that. And it also makes it seem like people can't evolve and people can't grow and learn from their mistakes. So that stuff to me drives me nuts. And then it's, the showboating. Okay, so where do we draw the line? Because Aaron Rodgers did the discount double check all the way to a Super Bowl to the point where it's still a commercial as we speak. So it just seems to me that there's more being implied here potentially or inferred than what's being led on. And I know that Charles Barkley doesn't want to hear about race in this discussion, but look, Cam brought this discussion up too. Okay, so it's not like we're just making this stuff up. And I think that he realizes, Warren Moon has talked about it, that look, if you're inherently prejudiced or racist, you're not going to like him. We get it. But we're talking about the other people now, okay? We're talking about why is it that you're holding on to these things that happened years ago. Look at the guy you're seeing now. He's a great leader. His teammates seem to love him. I mean, adore him. Obviously, his coaches, all he does is talk great about his relationship with his coaches, including Ron Rivera, Mike Shula, Ken Dorsey, so on and so forth. They seem to only praise him internally and obviously outwardly as well. And then you see the stuff he does in the community. I mean, the kid he went to go see on Halloween, right? You're talking about a kid who was, I believe, diagnosed with cancer, was really ill. He wasn't there with a bunch of cameras. He was there, and the family ended up taking an Instagram photo, and then it became a viral thing. But this is the type of stuff he does, including the touchdown celebrations, giving footballs to kids. I don't get why we can't just get over all the nonsense from whether it's the pay-for-play, the alleged stuff there at Auburn, whether it's the laptop or the showboating. Move on, man. It's a game, okay? This isn't that serious. Let him have some fun and just acknowledge him for the person and the human being he is both on and off the field.
Kate? I don't think he deserves the criticism, but do I understand the reaction by some people? I do, and let me explain, because we just do not like change as human beings. And for, what's it been, 40 years, we've seen the QB position, this venerated position in our society that seems to be synonymous in a lot of ways with like the military and leadership. We've seen it portrayed in a specific way, and oftentimes by people with a specific color. And if it was some black QBs in the past, the culture was different around how they occupied that position. So now Cam is bringing something completely different to it, and people do not like change. So I think there are some people who actually don't like celebrating QBs. And then there are some people who need to take a good, long, hard look at why they don't like Cam Newton's celebration and ask themselves if it is tied to race or if it is coded in some way about culture and racism. I think the thing is that we have this idea that when Peyton Manning or another QB throws a TD or rushes for a QB, not often Peyton Manning rushing for QBs, but other QBs, and hands it to the ref, that somehow that means that person, that man, that QB is humble and selfless. No, not necessarily. You are just seeing one facet of him in that moment. That doesn't have any reflection on how he might be off the field. And yet with Cam, we're seeing an authentic sort of like jubilant reaction to me, which I would rather see, because I feel like I'm getting the real Cam rather than just somebody handing off the ball, which I think means nothing. You're actually not getting any glimpse into anything at all. So I understand why some people are fired up, because to them, for some people, it comes down to They just don't like any athletes who celebrate. They don't like this shift that we've gone through with the NBA and in certain sports where personalities are more dominant. They like the whole fall in line, quote unquote, team atmosphere. But I think there's a huge segment who are defending racism and their own thoughts behind that.
But it's funny that you mentioned authenticity and you feel as though he's being authentic with his celebrations. I think there's a large population that feel as though he's not being authentic with those celebrations. I will admit that I was a part of that population.
Here's the deal with that, and whether you think he deserves criticism or not, that depends on what you bring to it, not what Cam Newton and his actions have brought to it. Because to bring some memory to everybody else's memory, he's been doing this the whole time in the National Football League. When they stunk at Carolina, he was still doing the Superman. He was still doing the celebrating. This is not something that has happened with Cam Newton that all of a sudden happened when they went 15-1 this year. No. He wasn't doing the Superman thing at Auburn, but he was running around like a little kid, enjoying himself the 1 year at Auburn where he led them to the national championship and he won a Heisman Trophy. So let's not kid ourselves. It's okay once in a while that you want to be slaves to the moment, but once in a while, crack open a book. Or at least go online to say, well, he started doing that. No, if you have any brain in your head, you've realized that he's always done this in the National Football League. People don't like it now because he's winning. And he's letting you know what he's doing and how he's winning. And he hasn't changed. We can go back to the whole race thing. And there's some racism elements to this because some people are never going to accept, whether you're black, whether you're Asian, whether you're Hispanic, that you're not on the same level as somebody else. There's plenty of men out there that don't want women on this broadcast, that don't want women on ESPN because of what they brought to the whole table. But here's the deal. Cam Newton, the one thing that people seem to forget about last week, he said, you can think what you want. I'm okay with it, but I'm going to do what I want, and whether you're okay with it or not, that's not my problem. That's your problem. So for anybody complaining about why is he celebrating, hey, they got NFL films all over the place. There's Google and YouTube everywhere. All you got to do is go back to his rookie season when he's tearing apart the league, and he was celebrating then. The difference now is that they're not 6-10. They're 60 minutes away from winning a championship, and that bothers some people because they want their guys to be like that guy over there. Well, you know what? When Tom Brady was yelling in people's faces, he yelled in Ryan Clark's face. Didn't hear one thing said about Tom Brady going over the line. It was like, look at that competitor. Look how passionate he is. Let Cam Newton have done that to somebody.
But don't you think there's a difference between yelling at your teammate for a mistake he might have made versus
well, no, Tom Brady's yelling at Ryan Clark, who's on his team, on the opposite team, as he went to celebrate a touchdown because he was upset with Ryan Clark said early in the week, and Tom Brady took it personally. I didn't have a problem with Tom Brady doing that, but it seems that should be more of an outcry because he made it a point to go at somebody else on another team. I've yet to see Cam Newton one time do a dance where he was taunting the other football team. I've yet to see that at any given time in the NFL. So if that's your problem, that's fine. But Cam Newton's basically saying, if we win, you think I was doing the Superman before? I'm going to have the whole DC Comics if we win a championship, and if you don't like it, that's on you. That's not on me.
And a lot of that comes back to the ways we've accepted we want quarterbacks to behave. And Tom Brady, even when he's getting in someone else's face, it's under this umbrella of what we've accepted from quarterbacks in the way they communicate and how they operate. Now Cam comes in and he's completely blowing that out of the water. And for some people, that's shocking and scary, right? It's scary that all of a sudden this position that they've become accustomed to being occupied in a certain way now looks very different to them, and they don't like it.
He's kind of taken on the role of what wide receivers typically do, right?
Exactly.
Because he's the one that's doing all the celebrating.
If you don't want to celebrate, keep him out of the end zone.
Yeah, no, and listen, I think his commercial says
That's what he said, too,
His
yeah.
Beats commercial says it best. If unfortunately, there's no Band-Aids for feelings.
Right. Your feelings get hurt too
Well,
bad.
he is already making history. He is the first QB to win the Heisman Trophy, to win the national championship in college, and also to appear in the Super Bowl. Welcome back. The Cleveland Cavaliers 2.0. Yeah, pretty darn good. Last night, LeBron and company beat the Pacers in overtime. The Cavs are now 5-1 since the firing of David Blatt and since they held a players-only meeting. Here's LeBron and Tyronn Lue after their big win last night.
You know, we're the head of the snake, you know, myself and Kyrie and Kev. And when we perform like we do, that's not what we do in the box scores. How we do is leading these guys. Things of that nature is going to help us down the road, and those guys in the locker room take our lead.
We can't resort back to bad habits when things get tough. You know, we got to continue to play the same way we've been playing. And they were looking at me to bail them out. And I know I'm not in a position this early in my career, but I wouldn't call a timeout. And I wouldn't even look at them. I'm like, y'all dug this hole and get out of it. So, you know, guys stuck together, and we continue to fight. When overtime, we won the game.
All right, now that we've seen several games, what are your expectations, guys, for the Cavs in the postseason? George?
My expectations are they're going to get to the NBA Finals, but the team's expectations needs to be to win the NBA Finals, because any team with LeBron needs to feel like they can win the championship. So we'll start there. I don't think they're better than the three best teams out west. I don't think they're better than Golden State by any stretch of the imagination. I think they have a slightly better chance against San Antonio, but I don't think they can beat them. And I think they have a slightly better chance than that to beat Oklahoma City, but I don't think they can beat a healthy Oklahoma City team either. With that said, I do like what I'm seeing here. Now, there was a lot of talk about pace and increasing the pace, and it's funny because I was on SportsCenter yesterday with Tom Haberstroh, and he broke it down from the numbers perspective and said they're actually playing slower than they were with David Blatt. But what's happening is this. Guys are being more aggressive, particularly the big three. Kevin Love is not hesitating to take shots. There's no pump fakes or extra passes. If he's open, he's getting the shot. The third guy in that offense, much like Chris Bosh when he was in Miami, should be able to take the open shot right away. Kyrie Irving has been extra aggressive as well. He's averaging 16 shots a game since Tyronn Lue took over. LeBron is kind of picking and choosing his spots. Against the Spurs early on in the first half, he got guys involved. He had 6 assists and only 6 shot attempts in that game. And then in the third quarter, he exploded for 14 points. So what you're seeing is this. You're seeing LeBron kind of pick and choose his spots, making sure everybody's getting theirs, and making sure those two guys with him are absolutely being aggressive.
Go ahead. No, ladies first.
I mean, my expectations for them haven't changed. It's just they don't seem as outlandish as they did when they, lost by whatever it was, 35 points at home. And those expectations are to get to the NBA Finals and take, whether it's the Golden State Warriors or the Spurs, to 6 or 7 games. I mean, I don't think any of us are going to sit here and say we expect the Cavs to win the NBA title, considering the level of basketball we're seeing out west. But I think when you talk about pace of play, possession-wise, it seems like they're slowing down, meaning like the actual pace of play is within each possession that it seems like they've sped up. It seems like there's more movement. Yeah. It seems like there's less just pounding the ball. It seems like they're actually creating a big three that builds off of one another instead of what we had seen for like a year plus from that big three, which is like they actually seem to be detracting from one another, leaving it with like a big like 1.5, because the whole point of that is to kind of build off one another and have 3 guys who make you seem bigger than you actually are and make your team seem better than they actually are. And that just wasn't happening with them. And now you can see with this subtle shift in pace of play within each possession that you've got over the weekend, it was the first time that all 3 of those guys scored 20 plus points. And so I'm kind of in this place with the Cavs now. I expect to see them back in the finals now because they've made these adjustments. It's just nobody's going to be able to sit here and say I expect them to win it all.
There's no way they should not make the NBA Finals. No one in the East is going to challenge them. I mean, I like Toronto on their guards, but there's not one team that's going to challenge them in the Eastern Conference and keep them from the NBA Finals. If they don't get the NBA Finals, then shame on the Cleveland Cavaliers. They have no business losing to anybody in the Eastern Conference. Now that all the whole kumbaya's out the way, that they had the team meeting and everybody got their grievances out, they didn't need Judge Judy being in the middle of that whole thing saying you're right and you're wrong. Here's what it comes down to with the Cleveland Cavaliers in terms of their expectations. And we can't just put it on one person, but I'm going to. It's on LeBron James. I know Kevin Love was averaging 15 points per game under David Blatt, now averaging over 19 points per game in the 6 games under Coach Lue. But the one thing that LeBron, and John Barry pointed this out last night on my radio show, he said, you never heard LeBron say Coach David Blatt. But he's saying Coach Lue, and that's our leader, Coach Lue this and Coach Lue that. So what you're telling us is that our expectations are still the same, but we were afraid we weren't going to get there because of that guy. And that's why we got rid of David Blatt. Whether LeBron orchestrated or not, you can believe what you want to believe. So if that's the case, and now everybody's feeling better, you're 5-1 ever since you got rid of David Blatt, what's going to happen the next time if there's another distraction or if guys aren't playing well, somebody's not getting the ball enough? You don't have that guy to blame anymore. So what? You're going to blame somebody else now? I think that soap opera, the Cleveland Cavaliers, that question is still out there because it's one thing to say, okay, we feel better now. There's always a honeymoon period, and the honeymoon's been great right now. The beach is wonderful, the Mai Tais are great, but at a certain point, you got to go back home. And are they going to revert to the kind of team that we saw under David Blatt? Are they going to revert back to that? That's why Tyronn Lue said that, look, guys, you got to figure this out. You can't revert back to those bad habits. But what if they do that in a crucial situation, and he can't keep them and can't police them from doing that? Then what the Cleveland Cavaliers? I can't wait to see, because that's going to play out at a certain point. There's going to be some turbulence, whether it's late in the regular season or in the playoffs, where Tyronn Lue's going to say, hey, wait a minute. Y'all guys say y'all can figure this out. That's why y'all had that team meeting. Well, go out there and figure it out, and don't just look to me to try to be the head of the snake. Go out there and bite somebody and make that work for you.
I think Freddie's right in the sense that the honeymoon is over, basically. That this is they've got to win here soon. And I know we don't expect them to win a title, but you have to expect a team with LeBron James, one of the greatest players of all time, to be able to win a championship. And I think that that's going to be the issue now moving forward, is if this thing doesn't get done this year, what's next? What kind of moves can they make to make this team better, whether it's now at the trade deadline in a couple of weeks or whether it's in the offseason?
Because you don't fire a coach with the most winning record ever to be fired unless you think that's the one thing you can do that sort of takes this mental energy away from your team, as if that's what they're going to fall back on and blame, which is almost what it felt like. Certainly, there were some tweaks that needed to be made within the offense to get those big three playing together, but some of it felt like if from day one they always felt like he wasn't the guy, well, at least now you've taken away that as an excuse from them. And that seems like a key thing, that they had to be in that meeting and be like, this is on us now.
Right.
No, it's really on LeBron. Right. Because if things don't go well, they're not going to blame James Jones or J.R. Smith or Kevin Love or Kyrie Irving. It's going to go right over there to LeBron James, because he said he came back to Cleveland to finish the job that he left unfinished when he went to Miami. So if you come back to Cleveland and you're just making the Eastern Conference Finals and NBA Finals every year, that's not going to fly. Especially it's not going to fly for LeBron James, because that's not what he came back to Cleveland for.
Well, so far they are doing quite well under Coach Lue. By the way, do you guys know where he's from, Coach Lue? Tyronn Lue? No. Mexico, Missouri. What is going on? I was born in Mexico, Missouri. That's the only reason why.
So there's the sign. There's the sign. Welcome to the home of Prince Siripapat, Mexico, Missouri. Who got the Tyronn Lue guy?
It was my mom that actually brought it to my attention, because he was actually several years older than me. So I had gone on to Tampa at that point. But
he's always going to like he's 10 years of age anyway. Coach Lue. He's going to get carded until he's 80.
Mike and Mike. Tomorrow morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.
This story just gets worse and worse and worse. Johnny has gone off on his own. He doesn't even know who he is anymore. I still love the kid, and I'm just fearing that we're watching the unraveling of Johnny Manziel.
If I were the Browns, I would cut him. I'm tired of talking about Johnny Manziel, because ultimately it's the same stuff. I hope he gets his life together, but damn that. If it were most other people, we'd be holding them accountable. Why the hell should he get a pass?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people are tired of talking about him. We're going to continue to talk about him. That was Skip and Stephen A. on Johnny Football after another off-field incident involving the Browns QB. In fact, this is the second time Manziel is being investigated for possible domestic violence. In regards to his future in football, the Browns can't make an official decision about him until Monday. So, guys, should Manziel get another chance in the National Football League? Freddie?
Today's Groundhog Day, right?
Yeah,
I feel like I'm Bill
right?
Murray and Sonny and Cher singing "I Got You, Babe," and Punxsutawney Phil has even the shadow in that movie. That's what it is with Johnny Manziel. It is Groundhog Day. I don't know about the whole should he get another chance, because there's always going to be somebody out there that's going to believe if we get him here, he's around our guys.
Jerry Jones
is going to be on fire. As a Cowboys fan, don't even say that, because it's probably going to happen, George.
Oh, you know
it's probably coming true. Yeah. Here's the deal. It's not about should Johnny Manziel get another chance. It's if Johnny Manziel wants that chance. Because you can't get your party on or always have trouble around you and think that people are going to forget it. The National Football League was here long before he got here. It's going to be here long after he leaves, of his own choosing. And this is his own choosing right now. So I'm not saying that this was his fault, what happened over the weekend, but I don't think it's a coincidence that every time we turn around, something's being jumped off, and he's always in the middle of it, and it's usually never anything good. You would think that the Cleveland Browns don't want you anymore. Hugh Jackson basically said at the press conference, he hasn't even contacted the guy. I'm sure that, hey, Coach Jackson, Johnny Manziel on the line went, yeah, I got it, and he went on to do something else. So it's not so much about Johnny Manziel, should he get another shot. It's if Johnny Manziel wants it, then what are you going to do about it? Because I guarantee you, whether it's the Dallas Cowboys or somebody else, somebody's going to take a chance on this guy, and they're going to rue the day they decided to do that, thinking you can change this guy. You can't save people that don't want to be saved. And all we've seen from Johnny Manziel in his first first 2 years in the NFL is somebody that does not want to save himself from himself to be a better person and a better player in the NFL field.
You know what the Hugh Jackson thing reminds me of? The fact we were just talking about LeBron. It took LeBron, what, 4, 5, 6 weeks to meet with David Blatt? That feels like the same kind of thing that's going on there with Hugh Jackson. And I don't blame him, because you know what? I was a guy who was all in on Johnny. I was like, this guy's going to be fun. He's going to be good for the game. And I felt like, okay, maybe he can mature. We saw, at least early on in the season, his teammates were like, man, his head's in the playbook. He really seems like he's getting it together. But you know what? At the end of the day, he is who he is. And he comes across as a kid who maybe kind of bratty, right? Like, that's kind of the best way to describe him, where he's always gotten his way, and in college he was the big man on campus. That's not the case in the NFL. And let's talk about this. He's just not good enough at the National Football League level. I've sat here and tried to make excuses after excuses after excuses for him, and I'm done. I'm tired of it. He's not good enough on the field to warrant this type of behavior, and certainly these type of chances at this point.
Yeah, I don't think he should get another chance until he has remedied the reason why he ruined his first chance.
Agree.
I am down with anyone getting a second chance if the mistakes that caused the first flop have been remedied. That's where Johnny is right now. He's continuing to make all of the same mistakes, and it's kind of reached a point now where I just have a lot of sympathy and empathy, because there's no way this guy who put all this work into football would just continually make all of these mistakes and be in the middle of everything unless there's like a genuine problem, an underlying problem that he needs to get help for. So until he gets that help, whatever it is, I don't see why he should be back in the league, because all he's had is soft landings to this point in his career and in his life from the outsider's perspective. So until that changes, why would he be forced to change all of those past mistakes and all of that past behavior to actually open the door to a second chance? Because what's the point of getting a second chance if you're going to continue to make all of the mistakes that you've been making before? I mean, you're going to be in the same spot you were in.
I hope there is a problem. Seriously.
I definitely think
I hope that's the case, from whether it's clinical, professional, whatever that is. Because if there isn't a problem,
then he's just a brat.
Then he's just a complete fool.
Yeah.
Seriously, brat, whatever you want to call him. So maybe that's the deal. Maybe there's a problem that he doesn't want to admit to, or somebody knows something about that they don't want to admit to, hoping that he'll figure it out. This is the definition of insanity. Waiting for him to figure this out by himself.
There has to be a problem. I mean, it's like 48 hours after the Browns owner props open the door to your future with the Browns, saying the door's not completely shut. The police are around you. I mean, you have to do a lot to get the police to show up.
And also, our main indicator during the off season, he went to rehab.
To some form of rehab.
Some form of rehab. We don't know what it is, but obviously he had an issue with that. Whether that was a PR move or whether that was very authentic. But like you said, Freddie, the person has to want the help.
And it could have been both at that point. PR move and he wanted help, but he's just not ready for help yet.
Right,
maybe.
And it can be both. It could be he has a problem, and he's also kind of grown up like a brat. There's nuance to this discussion.
You keep enabling people like this because of their talent or what you think their talent is. You're giving them a false sense of security. Because Johnny Manziel is thinking, well, someone's going to give me a chance because of my ability. He believes that in his mind, whether it's Cleveland or somebody else. If that door shuts on him, then we'll see exactly what he's all about.
Well, he believes that that's going to happen because it's kind of true. I hate to tell you. I hate to tell you, Cowboys fan, but I think he might be going to
Somebody needs to throw away Jerry's flip phone, because I think he still has a flip phone.
Flip phone?
Yeah. Really? He needs to throw that. Somebody needs to throw that away.
Stephen Jones, give it a flip phone. Save your father.
Yeah, exactly.
You should update that phone. Well, we will see if Johnny Football's career is over.
Brady rushes up. Brady throws past the 50. The Broncos are the American Football Conference champions. They're going to Super Bowl 50.
Cam Newton trucking right to the 5. Leaps for the end zone. Touchdown. The Carolina Panthers are headed to Super Bowl 50.
And speaking of Super Bowl 50, let's go ahead and make some picks. Peyton Manning versus Cam Newton, Broncos versus Panthers. This is actually the 6th matchup between two #1 seeds, but the first time two QBs selected #1 overall will face one another in the Super Bowl. So we are here at the DiGiorno Make the Right Call pick board. You guys hold your heads up high, no pun intended, as you can see there. All right, so who are you picking? Ladies first. Kate?
Let's see.
We don't have all the time. You can't think about this too long. Okay.
This is not Jeopardy.
Yeah. Here.
All right.
Here's why. Because I think the reason the Broncos had a shot against New England felt like they had this like sliver of this that they could go through in terms of pressuring Tom Brady. And they could do so without blitzing all the time. They could have their front four, get some pressure on him. And historically, Tom Brady, if you got like a certain level of pressure on him, his percentage dropped, and his performance, his QB rating, and all of that dropped. And so there was this, Wade Phillips had this way where he could kind of scheme the Broncos into the Super Bowl. I don't think that same thing exists with the Carolina Panthers. I'm not sure that you can pressure Cam Newton. He's been amazing against the blitz. So that Broncos defense, while it's amazing, needs to do something special to get after Cam Newton. And this year, he has been better against the blitz. He's great against pressure. He can run. I'm not sure there's much that the Broncos can do to contain that. So we need scores too, right? Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going 24-13. Carolina wins.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, George.
All right, I'm going to make my pick here, and I'm going to go right here.
Ah, tricky. Thought you were going to be the one
Amanda
to pick the
never straddles the
Broncos.
line, got close to the line.
I, like Kate, also think Cam Newton is going to be a big reason here. The reality is the Denver Broncos haven't seen a guy like Cam Newton, okay? They haven't been able to play against a quarterback that's that mobile. Now, granted, they've played against some bigger quarterbacks like a Ben Roethlisberger or whatnot, but Cam, particularly in the red zone and near the end zone, is unstoppable. I mean, you can't stop their offense once they're down there. And I think as great as the Broncos defense is, they're going to have some trouble getting to him because he's so mobile, because he can do so many things on the move and on the run. I think that's part of it. I also think that the Carolina Panthers secondary is very opportunistic, okay? And we've seen Peyton Manning, even though it wasn't against the Patriots, we've seen him this year struggle at times throwing the ball down the field. And I think at some point they're going to have to try to do that. And I think the Carolina Panthers secondary will make an easy day potentially of Peyton Manning. So I like the Carolina Panthers 26-17.
All right, everybody's liking the Carolina Panthers. Freddie?
So am I going to be the one to
Are
go
you gonna
with
be the
the
one?
Denver Broncos? Am I going to be the
Do
first?
it, Freddie. Come on.
That's not a no. That's just a hell no. There's no way I'm doing that because, to your point, George and Kate, about their defense, the Carolina Panthers defense, people talk about Josh Norman and Luke Kuechly for good reasons, but the guy that led them in interceptions was Marco Coleman, their safety, a guy that was discarded by the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Kansas City Chiefs did not bring him back, and look what he's able to do in the secondary, really controlling things, even when they had injuries that cost them a couple of players. But they're facing an old-school offense that led the NFL in scoring at over 31 points per game in the Carolina Panthers. Keep an eye on Jonathan Stewart. Everyone talks about Cam Newton, but Jonathan Stewart and that offensive line have been really good so far in the first two games of this postseason. He had that 59-yard run the first play of the game against Seattle against an outstanding defense, and they just trucked them in the first half, leading 31-0. Wade Phillips is one of the great defensive minds we've seen in the NFL in the last 15 to 20 years. Not a good head coach, but that man can dial up a defense, and that's what he's been able to do with the Denver Broncos. But the middle of that offensive line, led by Trey Turner in the middle, that match with him and Derek Wolfe, that could decide this game because I think both defenses will try to impose their will on the quarterbacks. I think the Carolina Panthers defense, to your point, George, about being opportunistic, Luke Kuechly back-to-back picks for touchdowns in the first two games of the postseason. That and that offense, getting in the red zone, not settling for field goals, getting touchdowns. I like Carolina. It's going to be a knockdown, drag-out battle. I got them winning at 27-16.
Man, you know what? No one wants to go against the
There's a
grain.
lot of
If I had a head, I would have put it on the Broncos.
Maybe Vince Vaughn.
No.
Maybe
I would have.
No,
I
you
totally
wouldn't.
would have. I totally
Don't lie.
would have.
Get a
I
vote.
would have. No, I'm serious. Our
Don't lie on
producers
national
know.
TV.
It's all about Super Bowl experience. Broncos have 18 players versus the Carolinas. They have 6 players.
Broncos
that
have more
ever played in
experience
the
than
Super
Seattle
Bowl.
2 years ago. How did that get them?
All right, we're moving on. Hey. The Vegas Raiders, it's an interesting concept. The NFL sent out a memo to all 32 teams, essentially leaving the door open for a team in Las Vegas. The Raiders' lease with the Oakland Coliseum ends next month. So with that in mind, in an interview with the San Mercury News, Raiders owner Mark Davis says the team will most likely stay in Oakland in 2016. So guys, is it a good idea for a team to move to Vegas? Kate?
Well, let me preface it by saying I don't ever advocate for teams leaving cities because I know how painful that is for the fans in the existing city. So it's not like I think it's an amazing idea because I know there'd be a lot of Oakland fans who would be devastated, and you don't ever want to wish for that. But if we can pull apart that and abstractly look at the idea of having an NFL team in Las Vegas, it'd be pretty fun, right? It would be pretty great. And it feels like in the past, the reason to not do it was this sort of arbitrary reason of gambling, and we don't want the optics of having an actual NFL franchise in this city and coordinated with gambling. But we all know that it's just proliferated to the point now where there's no distinction between the amount of gambling that's going to happen if there's an NFL franchise in the city or if there's not. And it seems like this kind of arbitrary line in the sand that the NFL has drawn that, according to the memo, doesn't actually exist. So it would be a fun concept, but I feel for the Raiders fans.
I agree with Kate. The Raiders need to be in Northern California, but if they were to leave, Vegas would be the place. Because when you think of the Raiders, particularly in their heyday, you think of wild, volatile, and just crazy, insane, right? Debaucherous. That's Vegas. That's the exact same description as Vegas. So I think that makes sense. I agree with Kate in the sense that there's this stigma of Vegas and gambling. Look at people like Adam Silver, okay? He's sitting there. He's telling us we should just legalize gambling in general, okay? And I think I'm with him at this point. We need to just stop babying people. And ultimately, we've had the NHL has had an all-star game there. The NBA has had an all-star game there. The NHL's talking about moving a franchise there. So, you know what? Let's go. Let's just do it. If Oakland can't get it sorted out, Vegas is a good option.
I don't know why we have not had a pro sports franchise in that city. Why is it taking so long to even have more of a discussion and say, okay, maybe we should think long and hard about this? Vegas, not saying, I don't know if we can get into the whole, they deserve a franchise, they deserve an NFL team, NBA team, whatever. But that city thumps 24/7. I'm a native New Yorker. Las Vegas makes New York look like a convent. Thumping 20. Why would you not want to have a pro sports franchise in a city that is never going to sleep in Las Vegas? The action is always going to be there. No matter what you think about gambling, you can be on one side or the other. But you know they're going to attract fans in Las Vegas for a pro sports franchise, whether it's the NFL or whatever. So why has it taken this long for a pro sports franchise to have not been in Las Vegas? I think this should have happened a while ago.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fan base. A lot of people are concerned that it's too transient of a city.
Well, they're moving to Los Angeles. They're moving to Los Angeles.
Miami is transient.
I mean, Los Angeles is ultimate transient city. Ultimate transient. That's why they moved the team there, because they know so many different fans live there that are going to go watch the LA Rams play.
And the people who pass through Vegas are ready to spend money.
Yeah.
Which should be the key idea for the NFL.
Yeah, you get like a pool party like the Jaguars have. You put that in the Vegas Stadium.
I mean, the ideas are already
Those are so expensive.
For sure. Let's just do it. What about this?
You can remake Ocean's 11 in Las Vegas now with the football team.
Leave it up to the Miami boy to just start coming up, conjuring ideas.
Bottle service. Okay.
Listen, if I was a rookie in the NFL, I would definitely want to go to Las Vegas. And on that note, we are done. Freddie, George, Kate, I'm Prim, Molly, Skip, and Stephen A. will be live from San Francisco tomorrow morning.
Hey, this is George Sedano. Now you can subscribe to the NBA Lockdown podcast in the Listen tab of the ESPN app. For the full NBA Lockdown experience, subscribe now in the new Listen tab in the ESPN app. Mike and Mike. Tomorrow morning at 6 Eastern on ESPN Radio and ESPN2.